The 2026 Formula One season could produce the most chaotic racing we have ever seen. These are 5 scenarios that sound completely impossible, but actually have real evidence backing them up. A compression ratio scandal is already brewing behind closed doors. A 4-time world champion might walk away mid-season, and a new team could genuinely beat the established giants. Next year's regulations represent the biggest overhaul in F1 history, and history tells us that when rules change this dramatically, nobody stays safe for long. The answer to number 3 genuinely shocked me, so make sure you stick around for that one. Historical backing makes the first scenario especially compelling, and it starts with an underdog story that still feels impossible. £1. That is what Ross Brawn paid for his team in March of 2009, and by November, that same squad had won both World Championships. Brawn GP did not exist in January, and the secret behind their success was straightforward. Brawn abandoned the 2008 car early to focus entirely on understanding the new regulations, and his engineers exploited a double diffuser loophole that every other team missed. The 2026 regulations create exactly this kind of opportunity again. Pat Simons now works as Cadillac's technical consultant after serving as F1's chief technical officer, and he delivered a brutal assessment in January when he called the new power unit a camel. His exact words were that they ended up with a power unit sparse on energy, and that camel has complexity gaps that clever teams could exploit. 3 teams have genuine upset potential heading into next season. Audi enters as a full works operation backed by massive investment and Qatar Investment Authority money, with leadership including Mattia Binotto and Jonathan Wheatley running the show. Everything they have built targets to 1026 specifically, with no compromises carried over from previous car development. Williams posted their best points haul since 2016 last season when they finished 5th in the Constructors' Championship. And team principal James Vowles has expressed unusual optimism by saying he does not see the stark concerns coming out of other corners. Cadillac assembled over 300 staff across 4 facilities, spanning Indiana, North Carolina, Silverstone, and Toyota's Cologne wind tunnel. And they signed Valtteri Bottas, along with Sergio Perez, who both bring race-winning experience. History supports this scenario strongly because major regulation changes shuffle the deck every single time. 16 wins from 19 races. That is what Mercedes achieved in 2014, after going from occasional race winners to absolute dominance. 2022 saw dominant Mercedes fall to 3rd place when the ground effect rules arrived. And that brings us to something even more explosive. Because while underdogs prepare their challenge, a scandal is already brewing at the front of the grid. This is not speculation because the controversy is already happening. High-level sources told the race in December 2025 that Mercedes and Red Bull are suspected of exploiting a grey area around the 16:1 compression ratio limit. The technical detail matters here. Engines expand when hot, and regulations currently only require ambient temperature measurement, which could allow effectively higher compression ratios during actual racing conditions. 0.3 to 0.4 of a second per lap. That is what the performance gain translates to when you raise compression from 16:1 up to 18:1, which theoretically provides 10 kilowatts of extra power, or roughly 13 horsepower. In a sport where hundredths decide race outcomes, that advantage becomes enormous. The FIA responded with notably weak language when a spokesperson stated they continuously review such matters to ensure fairness and clarity, and adjustments to regulations or measurement procedures can be considered for the future. That is bureaucratic speak, for we have not figured this out yet. Ferrari's Fred Vasseur hinted at the tension building when he pointed out that teams have grown up massively over the last year, which means more and more people are trying to find loopholes. The potential outcomes could reshape the entire championship. Formal protests could arrive at the Australian Grand Prix, results could get invalidated retrospectively, and a mid-season technical directive could close the loophole overnight while scrambling the competitive order completely. $100 million. That is what McLaren paid in fines when the FIA excluded them from the 2007 Constructors' Championship during the Spygate scandal, so precedent exists for severe penalties. But none of that matters if the biggest name in the sport decides he has had enough. And this is where things get truly unpredictable. Verstappen himself put this possibility on the table before the 2025 Qatar Grand Prix, when he stated that his contract runs until 2028, but depends on whether the new rules are nice and fun. His exact words were that if they are not fun, he does not really see himself hanging around. Driver feedback on 2026 simulator work has been brutal across the grid. Charles Leclerc called it not the most enjoyable race car he has driven so far, and Lance Stroll complained that going 400 km/h down the straight while having half the speed in the corners feels a bit sad. Red Bull's organizational chaos amplifies this risk considerably because the brain trust that built 4 consecutive Verstappen championships has been gutted. Christian Horner's dismissal came in July 2025 after 20 years with the team. Helmut Marko departed around the same time, Adrian Newey left for Aston Martin where he became team principal, and Jonathan Wheatley defected to Audi. The new Red Bull power unit represents their first fully in-house effort with Ford branding, and if it proves uncompetitive, Verstappen's famous intolerance for underperforming equipment could trigger his exit clause that reportedly requires a top 3 championship position at the summer break. Mercedes has pursued him for years, and Toto Wolff's interest remains public and consistent. George Russell confirmed that Mercedes held active talks with Verstappen's camp during 2025, so the destination already exists if the departure happens. Now, even if Verstappen stays committed, there is another threat looming over every team on the grid, and this one comes down to pure engineering survival, 13.7%. That was the technical failure rate during the 2014 hybrid. Introduction. The highest since 2006, when the previous engine formula changed. Both Red Bulls retired from the Bahrain Grand Prix that year, and Hamilton's title defense started with a lap 2 retirement in Australia. The 2026 regulations bring even more complexity to manage. 350 kilowatts now comes from the MGU-K compared to 120 currently, which means nearly triple the output through a system that must harvest, store, and deploy energy at unprecedented rates. Honda Racing Corporation. President Koji Watanabe admitted in January 2026 that, to be honest, not everything is going well. He explained there are many areas where they struggle, though nothing fatal has happened that they cannot overcome. And he added that some things prove successful while others fail unexpectedly because it is a mixed bag. Toto Wolff raised the specter of catastrophic failures when he asked whether energy harvesting disasters might happen in Baku or Monza before admitting he does not know and hopes not. The untested elements multiply risk dramatically across every team. 100% sustainable fuels have never run at F1 race pace before. Active aerodynamics introduced new potential failure points throughout the car, and 4 different engine manufacturers are producing brand new power units simultaneously. Red Bull Powertrains debuts their first in-house engine, while Audi enters with their first ever F1 power unit, which means half the grid runs unproven machinery. And while some teams fight just to finish races, one team might be preparing to run away with everything. Which brings us to the final scenario that connects all of this together. Mercedes has traveled this road before and knows exactly where it leads. Back in 2011, with the 2014 regulations confirmed, Mercedes began single-cylinder test engine development while rivals focused on the present season. 16 wins from 19 races followed in 2014, arguably the most dominant season in F1 history. The rumors for 2026 should concern every competitor on the grid. Mercedes technical director James Allison described the combined internal combustion engine and battery output as a thing of fearsome beauty, with approximately 1,000 plus horsepower available when running together. Paddock sources suggest Ferrari's engine sits approximately 30 horsepower behind Mercedes, and if accurate, that deficit translates to roughly half a second per lap on power-sensitive circuits. 40% of the grid. That is how much runs Mercedes power in 2026, with the customer team advantage amplifying any dominance dramatically. Mercedes supplies their works team, McLaren as reigning constructors champions, Williams coming off their best season since 2016, and Alpine as a new customer relationship. If Mercedes nails this power unit, that group could lock out podiums race after race. The FIA implemented measures to prevent this outcome, including performance monitoring after the first 5 races, and the additional development and upgrade opportunities system that helps manufacturers falling 2 to 4% behind the best engine. A power unit cost cap of $130 million limits spending advantages. But here is what ties all 5 scenarios together. They are not mutually exclusive, and multiple disasters could strike simultaneously. Picture reliability problems hitting Red Bull and Ferrari in the opening races while Mercedes dominates. Verstappen activates his exit clause by summer. The compression ratio controversy explodes and invalidates early results. Suddenly, a team like Audi or Williams, running that dominant Mercedes power unit, finds themselves in championship contention through no fault of their own. F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali warned everyone directly when he said the form. Book will be ripped up and the pecking order will be up in the air. Based on the evidence gathered here, he might be underselling just how wild 2026 could actually get.